I seriously think we have a ghost in this house. Even the kids think so. I mean, there's times when it's like, that just doesn't quite add up. And this is an old house, so you never know. So far, it hasn't been like scary stuff. It's just, type stuff. But some people don't believe in ghosts. I typically think that anything is possible. That's not what this video is about. Be sure to join the, not Discord. I don't really do that too much anymore. I use Discord for other stuff, not so much for the channel, but make sure that you like, share, and comment. This is talking about the Tacoma Town Center, rest in peace. Because the Tacoma Town Center, based on everything that I've seen, is pretty much dead in the water. If you remember, basically, North American Asset Management was a Chinese-ran organization that basically entered into an agreement with the city. It was a big thing whenever it opened, when they first broke ground. There was a Chinese dragon dancing and all this, and then there was ties with the people who built the hotel. And the EB-5 program, which is basically where people in other countries are able to invest in projects, excuse me, in America under the EB-5 program, and then they're able to live in America, right? And typically they move to the locations where they have their investment, right? They can check on it, they can look at it, they can say, look, this is what we've helped finance. And basically North American Asset Management didn't have the large sum of money, I think 200 million or so at the time, to develop this. And they had plans to build a skinny, tall tower in Seattle and all these big, ambitious things. Well, they realized they're not going to get all the money. And so what they did is they said, okay, we can develop this one building. And they finished it, right? And it's basic looking. It's nothing, it's basic. So they did that. And then they said, you know what, we're not going to be able to do it. So the agreement with the city was that you have to basically, the city was the manager of that project, of what happened. From my understanding, what's been told to me and legal heads, basically looking at what the language is without actually being there, was that the city basically told the developer, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a town center type of development. This needs to have residential, it needs to have retail, and it needs to have office. Those are the components that it needs to have. And when North American Asset Management didn't have the ability to do this, they had to go to the city to say, look, we can't do this, but we have a developer that can do this. We're going to transfer everything over to them, and they're able to complete the project. Now, the city had a choice. The city could have rescinded this and said, nope, thank you for what you've done with the one building, but we're going to continue to pursue this, put the ask back out there, see if there's developers that will develop this in our vision. And what was supposed to happen was a large, you can go on to, any website and see it. It's all over the place. It was supposed to have a large retail center and a lot of residential, 800 parking spaces and a parking garage. And they worked on the residential side first. That's what these one developers did. They worked on that piece first. And there's also mixed use, but they have not, in the years that it's been built, they have not leased one retail space in that building. Don't know why, they just haven't. But they have put in a lot of residences. The apartment part's fine. I even know people who watch this video that rented from them. So the city could have said no, we don't know these people. We'd rather put it back out there, see what we get. They didn't do that, right? And the reason why they didn't do that was because it's extra work to do. But two, you're having to basically, I see a fly. I got my little handy dandy. Because of the banana plants, I get all types of little flying bugs. So if you hear a little pop, well, the little guy went to heaven. But anyway, so they didn't want the project to lose its momentum. There was a building already built. They wanted this to continue to roll and finish, and technically the project would have been mostly done by now, right? It would have been this huge catalytic event in Tacoma. Big, big project. But you're quick, aren't you? I'll just leave this right over here. Turn it on. Let it just kind of, sometimes they'll fly right into it. Anyway, distractions. So they didn't do that. And there were a lot of developers in the area, local developers, who were upset that the city did not even consider them. And I kind of understand where they're coming from, right? Because they've proven themselves. They've been here. There's places to get them if you need to, right? So instead, they continued with the process and said, sure, you can transfer this. However, the city has the right to say the use of the land, meaning that these developers have to develop it with office, retail, and residential. It still has to be mixed use. It cannot be a stadium. It cannot be an amusement park. It can't be any of those things. It has to be mixed use. That's it. Because once the city voted, city council members voted, and they didn't do their due diligence, that cut the city out of managing what could happen. That was it. Now, this is based on people who went and got their degree in lawyering. This is what they're telling me, right? So, when Galena Equity didn't have the funds to do this, now we're noticing that, or we know that back in Idaho, that company went belly up. They didn't have the money to pay their own office space. They were kicked out of that because of unpaid rent. They transferred a lot of stuff over to another entity or another person, or they did something. I don't know the details of that. But essentially, in order to serve them papers, because there's liens on the property, there's stuff that has to be done. There's a contractor that's not even paid for the work that they did for stormwater and different stuff like that. They're owed $200,000 and they want their money. But the person that is to receive that lives in a gated community. So there's no way to get past those gates. So that's just a temporary, from what I was told, that doesn't mean that it's a done deal and that's it. It just means that's a very long delay tactic. That essentially, if they can hide out long enough, get enough money quick enough, that they can pick right back up again and start all over again. Highly doubt that's going to happen. Highly doubt it. So now the city's hands are tied. There's nothing they can do with this 6.4 acres of land. It's just sitting there growing weeds and trees. There's nothing they can do. And at this point, the person that is wanting to foreclose on the property, it's kind of hard for them to do that, because if I don't have notice that you're trying to collect or whatever, or I don't know anything about it, it makes it kind of challenging. Now, I'm not an attorney, but it makes it challenging. What will probably happen is that the Pierce County court system will have to get involved. And they have had to do this before with a developer here that didn't pay their bills. At least the project's complete, but they didn't pay their bills. And so now a lot of stuff's in receivership, and a lot of other companies are buying up these buildings, nice buildings, and they're holding on to them, right? Well, here, there's no buildings. There's just land, except for the one project that's complete. And even that developer that built that sued Galena Equity because you're breach of contract. Now, if it goes into Pierce County's hands, the court system, and the court can basically say, well, there's taxes you haven't paid, which is true. Now, if I was a developer and I didn't get my money, I can go through court and try to figure things out. But taxes? There's no way to get away from taxes. You can get away with a lot except for taxes. If you owe taxes, nope. So, or if it's something environmental, no. Those are things you won't get away with. You can get away with pretty much almost anything else, but those things, nope. So more than likely what's going to happen is eventually this will kick itself over to the court system, probably next year or so, around this time next year maybe. And then because again, once somebody receives the paperwork, from my understanding, there has to be some time for them to kind of figure out what to do. Well, if there's no way to get a hold of these people, then eventually the government will just step in and just do what they got to do. You don't owe the land anymore because you have pretty much forfeited a lot of stuff and you owe taxes. So more than likely, what will happen is that this will be sold. This is given that Glen Equity doesn't do anything, it will be sold and developers will buy it. Now here's where the city of Tacoma does have a little bit of say. Remember before I said you can't put an amusement park or an industrial plant there, you can't do stuff like that, but you have to have, and you can't even just have nothing but a giant office building. I don't think you could do that either. You have to have mixed use. It has to be done. And so more than likely, what you're going to see is instead of our chance of having a true mall, which is what this would have kind of did in the original developer, it was a 200,000 square foot thing with stores and shops and residential and an office building that looked really cool. That's not going to happen probably. What you're going to see is what you see around Tacoma now, which is a lot of mid-rises with 3,000 or 6,000 square feet, and that's it. I think that it is a travesty, to be honest with you, that this was public land that we lost, and that this was a project that had a lot of potential. And now it's going to be many, many years before anything gets done on this property. Now, I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think that there's not a lot of due diligence. I think there were things that could have been done. And I think a lot of local developers, I look at developers that are semi-local because they're up in Seattle. I look at what they're able to do. Great Expectations LLC is a good example. Great Expectations is putting in, to my understanding, there's 2 buildings they're putting in with a possible third, and they also own 3 other buildings in Tacoma. They just bought them up like you go to the convenience store and buy some snacks. They just bought them up like, okay. And they're really, really big in affordable housing and equity and all that stuff. And they're putting up Cornice House, which is a bit tiny postage stamp of land, but they got this big building there. They're knocking down another building. They said once the owner of that company, Ben Moritz, said once we're done with Cornice House and it's mostly completed, then we'll start work on the other one. And gave timelines and went to the city and said, I need to change the tax exempt thing because the financing would look better this way. Has been in so much communication. He even says the city of Tacoma has been beautiful to work with. And the city of Tacoma is beautiful to work with, no question. But, that guy has stuck to everything that has been said. And so now the Climb Tacoma building over there's like a Crawl Pro building right over there on Pack and 25th and Pack and what street is that? I always get it confused. 24th, I believe. I believe that's 24th Street. Anyway, that's being torn down and developed. Supposedly, and I don't know, this is rumor, that the U.S. Bank building that sits right across from Berliner is bought by him as well, and that's going to be a 300-unit development. I don't know, but that is the rumor, right? I don't have credible sources saying that. That's just kind of rumor. And the person that gave the rumor is not someone that just shoots stuff off. I said it's not credible because they don't have, they're not necessarily in the room, but they know enough to be able to say, yeah, this is probably going to happen or this isn't going to happen. Sorry. So why not go for a developer like that? Or Coase. I'm not saying these developers won't get involved, maybe eventually once things clear and all the trauma is over with for that site. But we could have worked with developers that were local that have proven themselves time and time and time again. And we even have others like MJR, which bought now it's called Tacoma Center. They bought that building and really refurbed and rehabbed it. They've done a lot of stuff. They could have dealt with building an office building on the site or something. We have so many different developers here that could easily do this project that it baffles me why that was not done. Now the city had their hands are tied. They have about as much control over that project as I do. And the only thing they can enforce is that it has to be mixed use. And that's it. And it's unfortunate, in which, again, I mean, somebody could put a warehouse there, but the city says, no, you can't do that. So that's a good thing, that we know that it will eventually be mixed use. But the big problem is that it may not contain the things that a growing Tacoma needs. Our city is in a very, I sit and run numbers all the time. I'm doing a lot of different projects and a lot of different things. And so it's important for me to know projections, and it's important for me to know like where the city is heading in terms of population growth, job growth, all of that, the lack of housing. I look at other cities. My hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky has, 9,000 jobs they can't fill. There's not enough people, even though that city is growing like twice, 2.5 times faster than we are as a population. They're growing 2.5 times faster, and they cannot fill the jobs. They have over 9,000 jobs they can't fill. Right here in Tacoma, it's the opposite. We don't have a whole lot of the jobs out there, but we've had a lot of jobs come online than we've had in the past, and they're paying a whole hell of a lot more than they have. It used to be where people would complain, Seattle pays a whole lot more, and they still do. But we're catching up quickly in terms of job pay down here, and so that's good. And we're catching up quickly in terms of job offerings. That's good. Where we're really struggling is really trying to manage the population growth. These massive jumps in terms of people coming to the city. That is becoming a struggle point, and it's going to continue to be a struggle point. Yes, you can zone all day long and hope that developers will be enticed enough to see everything and say, yeah, this is what we want to do. But a project like this, where it's kind of built in, where you're like, we know what we're going to get. We know it's going to have this, 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 and this. It really checks off so many boxes when you're looking at it from a planner's point of view, investor's point of view, and everybody else. They look at the Tacoma Town Center and say, it's not the mea culpa, but it is something that is so important that once it's developed, we can expect a lot of things. We can do a lot more downtown. There's a lot of things that will fit because we know how much is coming in. When this doesn't happen, it really does create a little bit of pessimism, right? It really does create this anxiety around that project. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have developers investing in downtown. You're still going to have that. Doesn't mean developers aren't going to trust the city. You're still going to have a lot of developers that will. And this is a major setback that really could have been prevented. Now, it's easier said than done. It's not like the city didn't do nothing and didn't investigate. I mean, they did check and verify that the entity had the capacity to complete it. I can tell you this. I used to run track. I used to be a sprinter, okay? I wasn't no cross-country guy. But I did a 5K once, and I was young at that time. And it was a combination of jogging, walking, and crawling. But I was able to complete it. I'm capable of doing that again. I have the capacity to do a 5K. But the actuality of it, it's possible, but the reality of it is probably not. And unfortunately, that was the case with Galena Equities, that they really didn't. I've actually spoken to them before. I've talked to them, called them up. They just seemed very rude, to be honest with you. Just talking to them, they just came off kind of rude. And this was when things were kind of okay, but it just didn't seem like there was much going on. The project switched hands and it took months and months and months and months and nothing. So unfortunately, there was not a lot of due diligence. Everything lined up at the wrong time, and you have the situation. So for now, Tacoma Town Center is dead. I know someone who said they didn't think it was going to happen anyway. They said that way before ground was broken. And unfortunately, that person was right. I said, I think there's a good shot. I think this would be great. I still think it will develop in some form and fashion, but the original design probably is not going to happen. A new set of developer or developers don't have to stick to the original design that was laid out. They can do pretty much whatever they want as long as it's mixed use. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyhow, tell me what your thoughts are about this. Major letdown. I kind of knew within the first 8 months of nothing, when they did switch over, something wasn't right. No dozers on site, nothing. The same fence that the original developer put up was still there, I think, to this day. Just literally not even a rock was moved. So tell me what your thoughts are. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and until next time, I will see you. Take care.